Best night you will never remember. It's ridiculous. All right. We're about to enter the Jewish quarter, guys. So, seriously, if you don't have the stomach for all the Jewiness, because it's about to get super Jewy up in here. If you can handle it, yeah, if you think you're soft, you might want to make a J-turn right now. Go right back. No one, huh? You're all gonna go? All right, you guys are a bunch of Vikings. Valhalla, let's go. Up.
Das ist die Position, ja. Den alle dicht, ja.
Really? I've got fucking 40 people. I don't need an amplification device. What's with that thing?
I find this hard to believe. I can't hear you.
Oh, really? Over the drive-thru?
Has anyone ever told you that before?
Please drive through. All right, here's the deal. We're about to enter the Jewish quarter. The way it works with the Jewish quarter traditionally in Europe is you take a section of land that nobody wants, in this case, a swamp, and you build a wall around it, and you force all your Jews to live there, and then you put restrictions on time, give them a curfew, you gotta be back by a certain hour, can't leave at a certain hour, and you put restrictions on jobs. You can't have Jews becoming captains of industry. So they allow them to work in mostly arts and sciences. So this is why you got a lot of scientist Jews. This is why you got a lot of Jew doctors. This is they went into these things. Math, sciences, also the arts. You got a lot of Jewish musicians historically in Europe, a lot of composers. You get actors, writers, directors, choreographers, tour guides. We're all over the place. Well, I'll tell you what we're not. Professional athletes. I think they've been putting some in our food so that we don't get strong. That's what it is. Now, they put something in our bagels to keep us from getting too uppity. Quaaludes in our cream cheese. So, this is all true. Anyway, so this is what happened. And they forced them to live in this swamp for about 700 years. From the 1200s until about 1880. And in 1880, Austro-Hungary, in a hip and with it, hitherto unseen, politically correct fashion, said, hey, Jews, you can live anywhere you want. And do you think after 700 years of building up this swamp, anybody wanted to move away? Oh yeah, all of them, because again, swamp. So even if it's, the sentimental swamp that my grandfather's grandfather lived in, live somewhere that's not a swamp and visit this on the weekends. So they all moved away, except for a few. And the city took advantage of this, and they pushed the few that stayed into the back corner of the city, and they tore down every single building except for the synagogues, obviously the holy buildings, and they dug up and mashed up the swamp and crammed rocks and slate and gravel and tarmac into it, and they got rid of the swamp. They fixed it. So then they built new buildings on top with all kinds of cool design and neoclassical cubist styles, and it's a hip and with it very modern European little quarter of the city. However, there are two things that you'll notice about the Jewish quarter in Prague. Number one, every building that's not a synagogue is about 100 years old. Also, you'll notice that the synagogues are 2 to 3 meters lower than the rest of the city because they built up everything around it. So the Spanish synagogue, which is 2 to 3 meters lower than the rest of the city. Notice that? Now, this is the Spanish synagogue. It's built in this Moorish style from the 1500s. When the Jews in Spain were hiding out during the Inquisition, they lived in the southern part of Spain that was Muslim. And so as camouflage, they adopted a lot of Moorish styles, the way they dressed, the way they built their buildings. So they incorporated a lot of North African Moorish architectural styles into it. So this building doesn't look anything like a synagogue if you've ever seen one. It looks like a mosque. It looks like an Egyptian library. Now, we're about to enter the Jewish quarter, and there's going to be a lot more Jewiness coming up soon. I did want to point out Franz Kafka. Franz Kafka was a famous Czech, German-speaking, Prague-born Jewish writer who wrote such famous books such as and who could forget? And what Kafka collection would be complete without? What? He wrote Metamorphosis in German, but it's called something else. sagt man auf Deutsch? Metamorphosis. Das war der Vergewaltigung? Nice. That's rape, isn't it? What's metamorphosis?
Metamorphose?
Verfall.
Verfall.
There you go. Verfall. Aren't those little fried Middle Eastern? No, that's falafel. Farfalle, that's Italian for butterfly. That's why they're called farfal. Yeah, farfalle. There's a lot of languages that have that. Like in Hebrew, butterfly is parpar. Comes from farfalle. Butterfly. That's why they're called bow tie pastas called farfalle, because of the big butterfly. Isn't that good? It's key, man. It's etymology of food. It was a class I took in college. It's brilliant. Food etymology? Seriously, if you ever go to a college that offers that, take it. It's hilarious. Like, weird stuff. Like, the Portuguese brought tempura to Japan. Kind of weird. Yeah. And the word thank you. The Japanese never said thank you until the 1500s when the Portuguese came. And the word arigato comes from obrigado, which is much obliged, like they say in Portuguese. And so they were Catholic, and so they celebrated Lent 4 times a year. They wouldn't eat meat, and they would make a batter, and they would deep fry shrimps and vegetables, and they did that. And the Japanese were like, "Kore wa nandesu ka?" You know, what the hell is that? And the Japanese and the Portuguese were like, "We do this 4 times a year," and 4 times in Latin is quatuor tempora, and they took the word tempura and incorporated that in food 500 years ago. That's why tempura is the outlier on their food. Everything else is raw and macrobiotic and very healthy and steamed, and then they deep fry fat. I mean, how would you deep fat fry this one thing? It's just because of the Portuguese influence. Etymology of food, steak tartare, all that. Everything's got a really awesome story. Getting back to Kafka, he wrote a lot of books, and my point earlier about pointing to everybody was, nobody ever read him. Not just after he died, but literally when he was alive, he couldn't get anybody to read any of his stuff. It sucked. He actually, when he left Prague, he took everything that he wrote and he put it in one box and he gave it to his best friend, Max Brod, and he said, "Maxie, burn it," and he moved away. And within a year, he was dead because tuberculosis is a bitch. And Max took that book and spent 10 years, that box, and spent 10 years trying to get that published all over the world, and he finally got it published. And the funny thing is, none of his works were ever published in this country until the 90s. Czechs didn't even know who he was until after the Velvet Revolution, and Americans started coming here, and they were like, "Oh yeah, Prague, that's where Kafka's from," and Czechs were like, "Oh hell yeah, who?" Franz Kafka. He wrote the weird Kafka-esque books, you know, that they're dreamlike and nightmarish, and they give the reader a sense of alienation. They were like, no. So they finally published his stuff, and they finally, just this summer, they tracked down that box of originals, the stuff that he wrote. There's some little old Jewish lady in Tel Aviv that's just sitting on them. She called like a local newspaper, and she was like, "I got all Kafka's original works in this shoebox, blah," and then hung up the phone. And then UNESCO came down and they were like, "We want that stuff." She's like, "No, go away." And so they're gonna take it from her when she dies. But until then, this is some old crab in Tel Aviv, just sitting on this stuff. So it's really kind of funny. Now, I'm gonna once again use my amazing stranglehold grasp on the English language to project all of you through time and space into the pages of one of Kafka's short stories. He wrote a lot of short stories that took place in Prague. You ready for this? All right. In this short story, Kafka wakes up and rolls out of bed in the middle of the night, and he goes out into the streets of Prague, and he's a little bit misty-eyed, but through the fog and the mist, he sees a giant man with no face or hands, and he climbs onto his shoulders to get a better look at society. Can you see this image with your mind? Can you see it now in your head, in your mind's eye? Flogging a dead horse. All right, let's go. To town.